local farmer, feeds thousands. During famine, years later, his farm becomes a community haven, providing hope and sustenance to all. Thaddeus Wainwright stood on his parched land, a landscape of cracked earth stretching as far as his eyes could see. The sun beat down mercilessly on Willow Creek. Each day, the sky remained a dull shade of gray, devoid of the life-giving rain that once nourished his crops. Thaddeus's heart felt heavy. He had watched his fields wither away, his hopes fading with the last drops of water. The drought had gripped the town like a thief in the night, stealing away not just their crops, but also their spirit. As he stepped onto his porch, he noticed a small crowd gathering at his doorstep. Faces lined with worry and desperation looked back at him. They had come seeking food, any morsel of sustenance he could spare. "Thaddeus, please," a voice called out. It was Martha, a neighbor whose children were too hungry to play. "We don't have anything left. We need your help." Thaddeus felt a pang in his chest. He could see the hunger etched in their eyes. How could he turn them away? The weight of their need pressed heavily on his heart, yet he knew his own supplies were dwindling. He took a deep breath, ready to speak, but the words were caught in his throat. Instead, he nodded slowly. "I will share what I have left." A flicker of gratitude blazed in their eyes, igniting a small flame of hope within Thaddeus. He remembered the days when the fields were lush and the town was filled with laughter and warmth. "Together, we can make it through this," he thought. The strength found in unity began to replace the despair. He gathered what he could spare, a few potatoes, some cabbage, and a handful of beans. As he handed out the food, the neighbors' expressions transformed from desperation to relief. "Thank you, Thaddeus," they said in unison. "You have no idea how much this means to us." Their gratitude became a balm for his own aching heart. In that moment, Thaddeus realized that even in the darkest times, there could be light. He felt a renewed sense of purpose, a commitment to his community, and the belief that together they could weather the storm. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, Thaddeus saw the toll the drought took on his friends and neighbors. He often found himself at the local gathering spot, listening to their stories of struggle. One afternoon, as he sat with a group of men, he could hear the frustration in their voices. "How much longer can we endure this?" one man lamented, his hands clenched in disbelief. Thaddeus watched their faces, each one reflecting a mixture of anger, fear, and helplessness. He wanted to offer them reassurance, but he felt just as lost. "We have to keep holding on," he finally said, his voice steady despite the uncertainty he felt inside. "We can't give up. We owe it to our families." The men nodded, but the shadows of doubt still lingered in their eyes. Thaddeus could see that it was not just food they needed hope. He felt a growing urge within him to do more, to find a way to lift their spirits. But how could he do that when he, too, felt the weight of despair? One evening, as dusk fell over Willow Creek, Thaddeus stood alone on his porch once again. The stars began to twinkle above, but they offered little comfort. He sighed deeply, wondering if they would ever see rain again. Then, as if answering his silent plea, he heard a soft voice behind him. "You're not alone, Thaddeus," Alara said, stepping into view. Her eyes, though tired, sparkled with a determination he admired. "I worry about everyone," he admitted, turning to face her. "What if we can't survive this? What if—" "Stop," she interrupted gently. "We have each other. We can get through this together." Her words hung in the air, resonating deeply. In that moment, Thaddeus realized that hope was not just about food, it was about connection, about standing together through the hardships. They would find a way, not just to survive, but to support one another. As he looked into Alara's eyes, he felt that flicker of hope reignite within him, stronger than before. The weight of despair was still there, but now it was balanced by the warmth of unity. With a renewed sense of purpose, Thaddeus resolved to be the beacon of hope his community needed. Together, they would find a way to overcome the drought's grip. Thaddeus Wainwright stood on his front porch. the sun casting long shadows across the dry, cracked earth of Willow Creek. The air was heavy with the scent of dust and desperation. As he looked out over the parched land, his heart ached for his neighbors. They had come to him, seeking help, their faces drawn and tired. But today, a different figure approached, one that caught his attention immediately. Ilara, a young mother, walked towards him with a frail child cradled in her arms. The boy's pale face and sunken cheeks told a story of suffering, one that Thaddeus knew too well. As she reached him, her voice trembled with worry. "Thaddeus, please," she whispered. "He is too weak to eat what little we have left. I don't know what to do." Thaddeus felt a lump form in his throat. He had seen hunger before, but the sight of Ilara's child struck a deeper chord within him. "I will help you, Ilara," he said softly, determination filling his voice. "I promise to do everything I can." She looked up at him, tears glistening in her eyes. "But what if you run out? Your crops are dwindling too." "Then we will share what we have left," he replied resolutely. "No one should go hungry in our community. I won't let that happen." Thaddeus felt a surge of purpose wash over him, igniting a fire in his heart. As he turned to gather what he could spare, memories flooded back. Warm evenings, spent with his own family at the dinner table, laughter mingling with the aroma of freshly baked bread. Those were times of abundance and love, a stark contrast to the harsh reality of now. He recalled how his father would say, "It's not the food that makes a meal, but the company you keep." Those words echoed in his mind, fueling his resolve to help his neighbors. Returning with a basket of vegetables, Thaddeus handed it to Ilara. "Here, take this. It's not much, but it will help." She accepted it gratefully, her hands trembling as she clutched the basket. "Thank you, Thaddeus. You don't know how much this means to us," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "You are a true friend to us all." As the days passed, a change began to stir within the heart of Willow Creek. Thaddeus made it a point to gather the villagers for shared meals, inviting them to his home to eat what little they had. Each gathering became a moment of connection, where laughter and stories filled the air, momentarily easing the weight of their struggles. One evening, as they sat together under the fading light, Thaddeus spoke up. "We may not have much, but together we have enough to get by. We can support each other, just like we always have." The villagers nodded, their faces illuminated by the flickering lanterns, hope beginning to blossom in their hearts. "Thaddeus, you are our rock," one of the older men, Mr. Hargrove, said with a smile. "You inspire us all to keep pushing forward, even when times are tough." Ilara chimed in, her voice steady now. "You remind us that we are not alone. Together, we can face anything." Thaddeus felt the warmth of their words wrap around him like a comforting blanket. He had become a symbol of resilience and compassion, but he knew he could not bear this burden alone. The strength of their community was what truly mattered. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the fields, Thaddeus looked around at the faces of his neighbors. Each one carried their own story of hardship, yet together they found solace in shared meals and laughter. In that moment, he realized that hope was not just a flicker, it was a flame that burned brightly when they stood united. "Let us continue to support one another," he said, raising his cup, "to the bond we share and to the hope that carries us through." A chorus of voices echoed his sentiment, and the night air filled with their laughter, weaving a tapestry of unity that would carry them through the darkest days ahead. As the sun rose over Willow Creek, its warm light bathed Thaddeus Wainwright's fields in a golden hue. After months of drought, the rain had finally come, and the earth was alive again. The wheat stood tall, swaying gently in the morning breeze. Thaddeus looked out at his land with a mix of relief and joy. This was the bounty he had longed for, a gift that could sustain not just him, but the entire community. Yet, as he walked through the lush fields, a shadow crept into his heart. An investor had approached him just days earlier, offering a tempting sum for his land. Thaddeus could see the appeal. He could pay off debts, secure a comfortable future, and perhaps even leave Willow Creek behind. But what would happen to the village without his farm? Where would his neighbors go for food? "Thaddeus!" called a voice, pulling him from his thoughts. It was Alara, her son, now healthy and energetic, clasped firmly in her arms. She approached with a bright smile, but there was concern in her eyes. "Have you thought more about the offer?" she asked, her tone gentle. "I know it could change your life." Thaddeus sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I have, Alara. It's hard to ignore such a chance, but I can't help but think about all of you. This land has been a home for us all." Alara nodded, her expression serious. "It has, but it could also be a chance for you. You deserve to think about your future too." "But at what cost?" Thaddeus replied, his voice rising slightly. "If I sell, I fear the community will suffer again. We just came out of such a dark time. I have promised to take care of everyone." Alara stepped closer, her son peering curiously at Thaddeus. "You have worked so hard for this harvest, Thaddeus. We all have. But we need to find a way to make sure this bounty benefits everyone, not just you." The two stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their thoughts hanging in the air. Thaddeus could feel the tension between ambition and loyalty, and it left him conflicted. He could see Alara's point, but the investor's proposition was like a siren's call, luring him with visions of a different life. "We should gather the community," Alara suggested, breaking the silence. "They need to hear about the offer. We can discuss how to use this harvest to help everyone." Thaddeus hesitated, but then nodded slowly. "You're right. They deserve to know." Word spread quickly, and soon the villagers gathered at Thaddeus's farm. Faces showed a mix of excitement and worry as they assembled under the old oak tree, its branches offering shade from the midday sun. "Thank you all for coming," Thaddeus began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I wanted to share some important news. The drought has finally broken, and we have a bountiful harvest ahead of us." A murmur of joy and relief swept through the crowd. Alara smiled, her son clapping his hands in delight. "But," Thaddeus continued, "an investor has offered to buy my land. I am torn between what this could mean for me and what it could mean for all of you." Gasps of shock echoed among the villagers. A man stepped forward, his brow furrowed. "Thaddeus, we have built our lives here. If you sell, where will we go?" Another woman chimed in. "This land is our home, not just yours. We need it to survive." Thaddeus looked around, taking in the worried faces of those he had fed during the drought. Each expression reflected the struggles they had faced together. His heart ached at the thought of abandoning them now, when they had just begun to heal. Alara raised her hand, drawing attention. "Let's discuss how we can make this work for everyone. This harvest can be a new beginning, but we must do it together." The villagers nodded in agreement. They began to share their ideas, talking about how to distribute the harvest, how to work together to ensure everyone had enough. The energy shifted from fear to determination as they realized their strength lay in unity. As the sun began to set, Thaddeus felt the weight of his decision lighten. He looked at Alara and the villagers, their faces filled with hope and resolve. In that moment, he made a promise to himself and to them. "I will not sell. We will share this harvest, and together we will build a better future for Willow Creek." The crowd erupted in cheers, their spirits lifted. Thaddeus smiled, feeling the warmth of their gratitude wash over him. He knew he had chosen the right path, one that honored the bonds they had forged through hardship. Together, they would thrive, and together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the sun began to set over Willow Creek, casting a golden hue across the fields, the townsfolk gathered in the community hall. The air was thick with anticipation and worry. Word had spread about Thaddeus's possible decision to sell his land, and the villagers felt a mix of hope and fear. They knew the harvest had been bountiful, but the thought of losing their sanctuary filled them with unease. Thaddeus stood at the front of the room, his heart pounding. A long table filled with the fruits of his labor stretched behind him, golden wheat glimmering in the fading light. He looked out at the crowd, seeing faces he recognized, faces he had fed during the darkest days of the drought. Each one told a story of struggle, resilience, and hope. "Thaddeus!" called out a voice from the back. It was Old Man Jenkins, his brow furrowed with concern. "What will you do? We need to know where you stand." Thaddeus took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "I want to hear from all of you," he said, his voice steady. "This decision affects us all." Several villagers spoke up, sharing their worries. Mary, a widow with 3 children, stood up next. "If you sell, what will happen to us? Our families depend on this land. It is not just yours. It belongs to all of us." "I agree with Mary," shouted another villager, a young man named Samuel. "We can't let an investor take away what we've built together. This land has fed us, and it should continue to do so." The room buzzed with murmurs of agreement. Thaddeus felt a surge of emotion as he listened to their voices. He thought of Alara, who had shared her struggles just days ago. He remembered her determination, and it sparked something deep within him. "Thaddeus," Alara spoke up, her voice calm, yet strong. "This community stood by you when times were hard. We shared meals, we shared stories, and we lifted each other up. We cannot let greed take that away." Her eyes shone with conviction, and Thaddeus could see the hope she carried for her son and the future of Willow Creek. He nodded, feeling a swell of pride for the community he had come to love. "You are right, Alara," he replied, his voice growing stronger. "I have thought long and hard about this. I cannot abandon you now, not after everything we have been through together." A ripple of relief washed over the crowd. Thaddeus continued, "I will not sell the land. I promise to share the harvest with all of you. Together, we will ensure that everyone has enough to eat. This land is our home, and we will grow together." The townspeople erupted into applause, their faces lighting up with hope and gratitude. Old Man Jenkins wiped a tear from his eye, and Mary smiled through her relief. "Thank you, Thaddeus. You have no idea how much this means to us." As the meeting continued, stories of struggle and recovery filled the room. Alara shared her journey of caring for her sick child during the drought and how the community had rallied around her. "We were stronger together," she said, her voice clear. "And we will be stronger still." Thaddeus listened intently, each story weaving a tapestry of resilience that connected them all. He realized that it was not just the harvest that mattered. It was the bonds they had forged through hardship. They were a family, and he would do anything to protect that. As the meeting drew to a close, Thaddeus felt a renewed sense of purpose. The decision had been made, not just by him, but by the voices of the community he cherished. He understood now that true prosperity was not measured by wealth or land, but by the love and support they offered one another. "Together, we will thrive," Thaddeus declared, his heart full. "Let us celebrate this harvest as a community, united and strong. We will turn this land into a place of abundance for everyone." With that, the villagers cheered, their spirits lifted. They knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as one. And in that moment, Thaddeus felt the warmth of hope enveloping them all, a promise of brighter days to come. The sun hung high in the sky, casting a warm golden light over Thaddeus Wainwright's farm. The day had finally come for the long-awaited celebration. The villagers of Willow Creek had gathered, filling the air with laughter and chatter as they transformed the farm into a festive space. Colorful banners waved gently in the breeze, and tables were laden with food, showcasing the bounty of the harvest. Thaddeus stood at the edge of his property, taking it all in. His heart swelled with joy as he watched the children play, their faces painted with smiles. He could hear the soft strumming of a guitar and the cheerful melodies of voices blending together. It was a sight he had longed for during the days of drought, and now It felt like a dream come true. "Thaddeus, come join us," called Alara, her arms wide open as she motioned him over. She stood with her son, now healthy and full of life, a testament to the strength of hope. Thaddeus walked towards her, feeling the warmth of community envelop him. "It looks amazing, Alara. I can hardly believe this is my farm," he replied, his eyes shining with gratitude. "It's not just your farm anymore," she said with a smile. "This is our celebration, a reminder of everything we have overcome together." As they mingled among the crowd, Thaddeus noticed people sharing their stories. Old Mr. Jenkins stood on a crate, telling tales of the old days when the fields were full of crops and laughter. "I remember a time when we all gathered like this, but it's been too long," he said, his voice filled with nostalgia. A young woman chimed in, "But we made it through, didn't we? Together, we found our way back." Cheers erupted from the crowd, and Thaddeus felt a sense of pride swell within him. He watched as Alara took the stage, her son by her side. "I want to share a story," she began, her voice steady yet warm. "A story of hope and resilience. Last year, when my child was sick, I felt lost. But Thaddeus opened his heart to us. He shared what little he had, and that made all the difference." The villagers nodded, their expressions reflecting the unity they had built. "It wasn't just about food," she continued. "It was about knowing we were not alone. Together, we stood strong. Together, we healed." As she spoke, the crowd grew silent, captivated by her words. Thaddeus felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. He realized that this celebration was more than just a feast. It was a testament to their journey together. Alara smiled, glancing at Thaddeus. "And now, we celebrate not just what we have, but who we are." The music started again, lifting the spirits of everyone present. Thaddeus took a moment to step back and observe. He saw people dancing, laughing, and sharing food. The sense of togetherness filled the air like the sweet scent of freshly baked bread. "Thaddeus!" shouted young Liam, running up to him with a plate piled high with food. "You have to try this. It's the best." Thaddeus chuckled, kneeling down to the boy's eye level. "You know what, Liam? I think you're right. Let's enjoy it together." As they shared a meal, Thaddeus felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He realized that the true wealth of his life was not found in riches or land, but in the bonds he had formed with his neighbors. They were a family, bound by their shared struggles and triumphs. Later, as the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the celebration, Thaddeus gathered everyone's attention. "Thank you all for being here today. This is not just a celebration of our harvest, but a celebration of us. We have weathered the storm together, and now we stand stronger. I promise to always share what I have, for we are a community, and that is our greatest treasure." The villagers erupted into cheers, their voices echoing through the fields. Thaddeus felt a wave of warmth wash over him. The laughter, the stories, the love, they were all that mattered. In that moment, he understood that they had created something beautiful together, a legacy of hope that would endure for generations to come. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Thaddeus Wainwright stood at the edge of his fields. The golden wheat swayed gently in the evening breeze, a stark contrast to the barren land he had once known. He took a deep breath, allowing the sweet scent of the harvest to fill his lungs. It was a moment of reflection, a moment to appreciate how far they had come from the days of drought and despair. "Thaddeus," Alara called from a distance, her voice ringing with warmth. She approached with her son, Samuel, now strong and lively. "Come join us. We're setting up for the evening gathering." Thaddeus turned to her, a smile breaking across his face. "I'll be there in a moment, Alara. Just enjoying the view." As she walked away, Thaddeus's thoughts drifted back to the past. He remembered the desperation in the eyes of his neighbors, the quiet pleas for help, and the promise he had made to himself. The drought had tested their spirit, but it had also brought them closer together. He felt a wave of gratitude wash over him, knowing that hope had flourished in the hearts of many. He walked slowly toward the gathering, where laughter and the sound of music filled the air. Villagers were setting up tables, draping colorful cloths, and preparing dishes that smelled delicious. The energy was contagious, and Thaddeus felt his heart swell with pride. This was not just a celebration of the harvest, it was a celebration of unity. "Thaddeus," shouted Old Man Jenkins, waving him over, "come help us with the food. We have plenty to share thanks to you." "Of course, Jenkins," Thaddeus replied, joining the group. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." He reached for a basket filled with fresh bread, feeling the warmth of the loaves against his palms. As they worked together, Thaddeus listened to the stories being shared around him. Each tale was a thread in the tapestry of their community, woven from shared struggles and victories. "Remember when we thought the crops would fail?" a woman said, her voice filled with nostalgia. "We were ready to give up, but Thaddeus stood strong." "Yes," another villager chimed in. "He fed us when we had nothing. We owe him so much." Thaddeus felt a blush creep up his cheeks, but he shook his head. "It was all of us together. We supported each other through the darkest times." Alara approached again, her son perched on her hip. "You've brought us all together, Thaddeus. Your kindness created this community. We are stronger because of you." "Thank you, Alara. But it's the strength of everyone here that matters the most," he said, glancing at the gathering. "We must keep this spirit alive for the generations to come." As twilight settled, the villagers gathered around a large bonfire, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. They shared stories of the past year, laughter mingling with the crackling of the fire. Thaddeus felt an overwhelming sense of belonging, as if each voice was a note in a beautiful song. "Let's promise to always support one another," Alara proposed, her eyes shining. "Through every challenge, we'll stand together." "I'll drink to that," shouted Jenkins, raising his cup. The others followed suit, cups clinking together in agreement. "To community!" they all cheered, their voices echoing into the night. Thaddeus looked around at the faces illuminated by the firelight. He realized that this place, once a land of despair, had transformed into a sanctuary of hope. The farm was no longer just his. It belonged to everyone who had fought alongside him. As the celebration continued, Thaddeus made a silent vow. He would ensure that the lessons learned during the drought would never fade. The spirit of generosity would be passed down, a legacy of hope for future generations. The narrator paused, reflecting on the scene. The true prosperity of Willow Creek lay not in the abundance of the harvest, but in the strong bonds formed between its people. It was a testament to the enduring strength of human connection, a reminder that together they could weather any storm. Share this story if you believe that unity can triumph over even the toughest challenges. Leave a comment about a time when coming together with your community made a difference in your life, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales like this one.